Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Recently I saw a YouTube video clip of this American chat show where they did this kind of social experiment. They went out onto the streets and they pretended to have the new iPhone. This new iPhone 5 that's going to come out any day now. And they pretended to have this new phone and they wanted to show it to people and see what they think. In reality, they didn't have the new iPhone 5. They had the previous iPhone, the iPhone 4S. And so they're going about on the streets, talking to people, asking them what they think of this new iPhone. And subhanAllah, the people who took this phone, they started to say how it felt lighter than the previous phones, and how the screen resolution is better, and how the video is better, and how the screen looks bigger. And they started to sing the praises of the previous iPhone, the iPhone 4S. And some of them even had that very same phone in their pockets. So they had the iPhone 4S in their pockets. And so they're taking out that very same phone and they're comparing the two exactly the same models, comparing them and talking about how this one that they were given feels lighter and how it looks better and how it's faster than the one that they have. Whereas in reality it was the previous phone, the iPhone 4S. And when I saw this, I thought, subhanAllah, it just shows how consumerism has engulfed our lives and how people are always after, the latest thing and the newest thing, regardless of whether it's something which is better or not. But because it's marketed as something which is new, automatically people want that latest thing. They want to impress their friends and their family, and they want to show it off to people and say, look, I bought the latest thing, I bought the latest iPhone 5 or whatever it is. Whether it's a car or whether it's a mobile phone or whether it's some kind of games console, the latest Xbox or the PS3 or PS4, or whether it's, for example, a type of clothing that they've bought, the latest trends. And I'm not saying there's something wrong with buying things like this. There's nothing wrong with having nice cars and having nice clothes. Inna Allah jameel yuhibbul jamal. Really, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is beautiful. Yuhibbul jamal. He loves beauty. But the issue is when this becomes our priority in our lives, when we start to worry about this more than what we are doing here in the first place, which is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islam should be our priority. And unfortunately what happens is people want to buy these things even though they don't have the wealth in order to buy these things. They spend their life savings to buy these things and they have nothing left, or they have very little left for themselves and for their families and to support themselves. And so they end up wasting their money. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تُسْرِفُوا إِنَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُسْرِفِينَ. Don't waste your money. Verily Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't love those who waste their money. And so they end up wasting their money that they don't actually have, money that they're already in short supply of, and they waste it on these things which aren't a necessity for them. And even after this, brothers and sisters, when somebody has this phone and he sees his friend who doesn't have this phone, how does that friend feel? Some of us, when we see our friends with the new phone and the latest models, sometimes we get kind of jealousy in our hearts, and we get this hatred in our hearts, and we feel jealous, and we have this hasad and this jealousy for that person because of this, because he has this phone. And so it breeds this kind of negativity in our hearts, in our souls. And we always want what our friends want, and we always try to compete with each other when it comes to these worldly things. And the sad state of affairs and the sad thing is that after 6 months, that same phone is going to be something which no one is even going to think about. This new iPhone that's going to come out 6 months down the line is going to be whisperings of a new iPhone, the iPhone 6. And then people aren't going to be interested in this new phone. They're going to be looking at the next thing. And then 6 months down the line is going to be another iPhone. And so where does it actually end? And really, is this going to give us, true peace and happiness and tranquility in our lives? Having the latest and greatest thing, is that really going to give us happiness? Maybe it might give us some temporary happiness, but in the long run, it's not going to give us that tranquility that we have in our hearts. There's always going to be the next, best thing. There's always going to be a new iPhone, a new games console, the PS3, the PS4. There's always going to be the latest car. There's always going to be new styles and trends when it comes to clothing. But it's not something which is going to give us that peace and tranquility in our hearts. And these things come and go. I mean, who from amongst us ever looks at the iPhone 1 now and says that, that's a really good phone? Nobody ever thinks that anymore. Whereas at the time when it came out, it was the best thing. And I always give the example of, if a person looked back 6-7 years ago, what was the biggest mobile phone company in the world? The Nokia. That was the biggest mobile phone company. And everybody wanted a Nokia mobile phone. They were the best mobile phones at the time. And look at where they are now. They're nowhere to be seen. And so when it comes to these worldly things, these things will come and go. Maybe in 5, 6, 7, 10 years time there won't be no iPhone anymore. Maybe that's the case. Some of you hardcore Apple fans maybe don't think so, but that's the reality. Sometimes, you know, things come and go, or all the time things come and go. The iPhone is something which is popular now, tomorrow it's going to be something else. And so these things are not going to give us this true tranquility in our lives. So the question is, brothers and sisters, what is going to give us that peace, and what is going to fill that void that we have inside ourselves? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Inna salata sakanul lahum. Verily in the prayer there is tranquility for them. Tranquility for the believers. If a person performs the salah properly and how it should be performed, and he knows that when he's praying he has this khushu and this focus in the salah, and he knows that he's in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it gives him this peace that he's looking for all his life. It gives him that tranquility that he's looking for. From the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions when it comes to having tranquility in our lives is remembrance of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. Verily by the remembrance of Allah, verily by the remembrance of Allah, tatma'innul qulub, do the hearts find tranquility. So remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, doing adhkar and keeping your tongue moist with the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are from those things which are going to give us true happiness and tranquility in our lives. And if we really want to have this tama'nina and this happiness and this satisfaction, you know, in our lives, then we should look at these things. Keeping our tongue moist with the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, keeping our duty to Him when it comes to our salah, and also being grateful for what we have. The third thing is being grateful for what we have. وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you are grateful, if you're grateful for what you have, لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ, I will increase you. I will increase you with what you have. So if a person is happy and is content with what he has, whether it's an old iPhone or an old car or an old games console or old clothes, if he's happy with those things and he's happy with what he has, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself will increase you. He will give you more because you're grateful for what you already have. And so these are just some of the things that I wanted to mention with regards to, you know, these new trends that always come about, and they come and go, and these products come and go, and it's not going to give us this true happiness and tranquility in our lives. Rather, in Islam we're going to get true happiness and true tranquility. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.